Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk is up and running. Three somewhat smiling faces, Vince D'Addario, Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers, of course. Glad to have you with us here today on IB Nation Sports Talk. This must be a special show because Neil Toth says he didn't go to work for this. I don't know what part specifically you showed up for. I hope it's not Kenny Minchie talk, because if it is, you might as well just go to work.
This is what I'm more worried about right here from Derek. That the show better be on fire because he's skipping his kid's first dance recital.
Oh my gosh!
I hope you're being sarcastic and you're joking.
He skipped couples counseling last week, didn't he? Wasn't that Derek that skipped the couples counseling last week?
He must have done that on your guys' show. Oh boy,
man!
Nick left work for this. Like, you guys are out of control.
No kidding, man. The expectations are high tonight. We've got a lot of different things that we're going to get to. You know, I asked, we talked a little bit at the end of the week. The Tyler Buchner talk came up. I asked Marcus Freeman a follow-up to that today about a bowl game. So we're going to be talking about, I mean, that's in the title of the show. So, of course, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Phil Jurkovec's Instagram comments. We're going to be talking about 21 and 31 running back personnel. We're going to be talking about Steve Angeli and why he didn't play Saturday. What else do you guys want to talk about? I mean, I think that right there is like a whole week's worth of content jammed into maybe 90 minutes or so.
And we only have a couple shows this week, so we got to make sure we got to make it count. So we're off tomorrow, so we got to make it count.
We are. Jess, you haven't said anything yet. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long work day, but we are here now. The U.S. also pulled out a draw that was unsatisfying after a very dominant first half in the World Cup. So
the dumbest foul in the box I've ever seen.
I don't understand why you would ever attack an offenseman from behind in the box.
Go to the ground. I was talking to my kid who is a defenseman. He's like, dude, you never go to the ground against somebody in the box. What do you do? Like, it was just a dumb play.
Okay, this is the wrong show for all this garbage. So you guys, if you want to, if Brian wants you to do a football show, you can go do a football show someplace else. We're talking about real football on this show.
The world's pastime, baby.
All right, here we go. Top takeaway from the 44-0 win over Boston College. I'll start with Coach D'Addario and roll it over to the stocking cap boy, who's kind of looking like a little bit like what's that? Where's Waldo, but with different colors today. So
with the glasses and everything.
I know.
My biggest takeaway is that this team can actually play a complete game start to finish. I mean, you could say it was a complete game against Clemson, but this was even more of a complete game, I think, on both sides of the ball. It was great to see. They never relinquished any kind of control to this game. The defense played well. The defense didn't play great. They played really well, right? The offense, I thought, was clicking on about as many cylinders as they're going to be able to click on this year. I don't want to say they maximized their abilities, but they showed what they can do. And I was very happy about what I saw from Tommy Rees and his play calling and the manner in which he went about the game plan. There was a lot of good things in the game plan. So, this is about as complete a game as Notre Dame has played all season, and it's right on schedule for yet another top 10 battle, that they have in front of them. So,
yeah,
it's good. I mean, nothing bad came out of Saturday, so it's good. I'm looking forward to this week.
Yeah, I like a lot of what Vince said there. This was their most complete game start to finish. Obviously, when you score 44 points and give up 0 points, that's just dominance on both sides of the ball. I really enjoyed the way that Notre Dame has played defensively up to now, and I think that they're going to provide USC with its biggest test of the season when it comes to a secondary, and obviously USC's biggest strength is Caleb Williams in their passing game. So I think it's good on good for the upcoming game between USC's offense and Notre Dame's secondary. And it was nice to see, Benjamin Morrison, obviously, again, with the 3 interceptions. It's good anytime you can get one interception, but to pull off 3 interceptions, I just think it showed that they're the dominant game plan that they had defensively. So really looking forward to that matchup between USC and Notre Dame.
What a day for that guy, Benjamin Morrison. What a last 3 weeks for Benjamin Morrison. I'll
Man.
save that for rapid fire since we've got that later on. But I mean, yeah, this is going to be the show, and it's, I'm not Baghdad Bob by any means, but I've got nothing negative to say at all. I said going into this game, this needed to be a game where we knew from start to finish who the better team was. And that's what we saw all day Saturday. Were there a couple mistakes here and there? Of course, it's a football game. Someone's going to make a mistake here or there. It was beautiful to see. It was beautiful to see the snow flying around out there as well in the second half. That was a lot of fun. Said that, wanted to see the snow. It's always like you remember the games and just performances. Isaiah Foskey, last play of the first half, and we were doing our over-under on sacks on Saturday. Vince called it right. He thought it would be under 1.5 sacks. Foskey got exactly 1, but we both said he would get it in the second quarter, and he gets it on the last play of the second quarter.
Nailed it.
That's right. And it was beautiful. They scored on their first 8 possessions. They played complementary football, offense, defense. Did they have to settle for a few field goals? Yeah. And they kind of not shot themselves in the foot, but slowed themselves down when they had to settle for a couple of those field goals, like kind of changing the mode of operation after the 2 tight end stuff, powered them all the way inside the red zone. And then they switched to 11 personnel. And, I haven't been the biggest proponent of 12 and 13 this year, to say the least, but in this case, it was working, and I'm all for stick with what's working. It worked for them, 44-0. Got no complaints. You knew who the better team was, and now can they cap off the season with another win over a top 5 team? That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, and offensively, they scored on their first 8 drives. I mean, when you go 8 for 8, yes, a couple of those field goals you would have loved for those to be touchdowns, no doubt about it, but they scored on the first 8 drives. I mean, that's pretty good. We would take that in any respect,
any universe,
right? And yeah, you score on your first 8 drives, and then you flip it over to the other side and you pitch a shutout, right? So score on the first 8 drives, pitch a shutout. That's a recipe, obviously, for success. So it was a good game. It was a fun game to watch. You add in the snow and all of that, and that just added to the pageantry, I guess, of college football in Northern Indiana, football period in Northern Indiana. And, I like the way things are shaping up, all the way from the head coach all the way down. I mean, things are shaping up very, very well going into the final game of the season.
Yep. It looked like a well-oiled machine out there.
Yeah, it did.
Yep. There was no playing down to the opponent, and that's the biggest thing. Go ahead, Jess.
Sorry, I was muted. Good thing I was muted. I was really impressed with the 5 turnovers that the defense created. That's been an issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, the defensive turnover ability outside of the Clemson game. And then again, this game, it just seems like on the back half of this season that they've kind of figured things out when it comes to turnovers. And I think those are going to become important against USC. You got to be able to take drives away with them. They're going to want to get in a shootout and score a lot of points. And that's the opposite of what Notre Dame wants to do in terms of their game plan.
The season could have just completely unraveled after they lose to Stanford, but instead, 5 straight wins now is what they've got. And they've won 8 of their last 9 to go with it. And who's been the starting quarterback? Drew Pine has been the starting quarterback. Jess, I'll start with you on this one. What's all that say to you?
To me, that says that a team kind of found its identity, on the back half of the season when it really mattered most. I think they knew what they wanted to accomplish against Stanford. It just didn't happen. And then after that game, it just all clicked. They knew what they wanted to do, and they started to execute. And I think most importantly, what it tells me about this team, Notre Dame as a team, is right now they're not built around a quarterback that needs to have all this overwhelming, success throwing the ball. They're going to lean on their offensive line. They're going to lean on their running backs. Diggs had 15 carries, like 122, which averaged about 8 yards per carry. Those are like video game type numbers. It's good to see Diggs be the back that I think that they want him to be. I think that in this offense, he is the premier back because of what he can do with his ability to, 1, catch the ball like Tyree, 2, run downhill like Estime, but also in the hole, he can get elusive and get back up, to his top speed very quickly. And I think that's the difference between him and Estime. Estime is obviously good downhill, but when Estime at point of contact, it takes him a while to kind of get revved back up. But with Diggs, you see him kind of get back up to top speed much quicker than his other backs. So I like those things because of, where their offense needs to go.
If this was around the horn, Jessa, you would have had a few bells dinging in there for you. Solid points. Wow, I like that. We'll see how many Vince gets. But it's you bring up a good point though about Diggs, and I'm curious to see what you think about this, because like what Jesse was just saying, they did try, with 21 personnel included, they did try to get Chris Tyree the ball a couple times, like jet sweep, shovel pass type stuff, get him outside, but it just didn't work. And it seems like for their mode of operation, Vince, that maybe Tyree is just sort of the odd man out for what they're trying to do right now.
Well, and that's a shame because they can still be who they are and still have that element that Chris Tyree brings. Mm-hmm. So it's a shame that it's one or the other, because it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be all of the above, right? And you can be that dynamic offensive football team. And I think that could be in the future, right? I don't think that, if I'm being honest, I don't think Drew Pine is the best screen thrower on the planet. And I think that is part of it. I think that's part of it. Now, I don't think they call enough of them.
He's not Brandon Wimbush, can't throw the screen pass, but still.
But he's proved that he's not great at
Brandon, but
exactly. So he's not great at it. I think that whoever's under center next year will be better at it. And, Chris Tyree will most likely be back next year. I'm not breaking any news here. I think we can all assume that he's going to be back. So you're still going to have that Ferrari in the garage that you need to get out in space, right? Ferraris aren't any good in the city, surrounded by other cars.
See,
Ferraris
and that's
are really
why
good out in the open.
That's why I think, we've talked about, you're going to do 21 or, whatever that you're going to do. That's why I think, and I brought this up with one of you guys last week or late the week before, like, you're going to get Jadarian Price back next year. And remember, with the spring that Price had, everyone thought that he was going to be the Ferrari. He was going to be the lead back of this whole group. And then he gets hurt, and look what this trio has turned into. Yeah. Now you're going to get a quartet, and you still got Jabron Payne. And who else is coming in next year? I can't think of the name off the top of my, Love. Yeah. I mean, this stable of backs is going to grow even bigger. So there's going to be more guys in the mix. And lacking a slot receiver like they do, I still think that is what can really cause more mismatches for defenses, is more of Tyree in the slot. When you're using him, again, you're going to have more backs. You've got even more opportunities to have two of those guys on the field at the same time.
Right. You beat me to that punch. I think that you have to play him out in the slot a little bit. And then, you can do a lot with him. You can bring him in motion across the formation. You can motion him into the backfield. I just think that if you're not going to utilize him as much as you are in the run game, knowing that this offense is a lot of short, quick passes, well, why not put Tyree in the slot and use his speed, like Vince said, out in space? So to me, hit him in the slot. You can use him in all kinds of different motions, get into different kind of formations. There's so many different things you can do. I think they've kind of proven that they want to stick to this Diggs Estime 1-2 punch. But like Vince said, you have a Ferrari in the garage that has to be used and can only make the offense better with his speed. So they have to find ways to utilize him best, and I think that's the slot.
Yes, completely agree with that. Which to you is more impressive, 281 yards rushing or holding BC to 51 yards?
That's hard because BC is not a great team, and I think we assume that both would happen at some point. But here's what I will say. The way that the elements ended up affecting the second half, and the way that Notre Dame affected what BC wanted to do through the air, I think it's the 50-plus yards that they got on the ground as a team. Because, yes, sack numbers are obviously part of that, but at the same time, that was the only way BC was going to be able to move the football, especially when the snow started coming down. They were trying to run the ball.
Yeah,
and
that's
they were
the
just
thing.
not successful at it.
Like Jeff Hafley seemed very content just to let some clock run there in the second half when they had the ball, just hand it off a few times, keep the clock running. He knew he wasn't coming back from that. I'm not saying that he threw in the towel and just completely quit, but you could tell. And that's why to me the 281 is more impressive because like what you just said, like part of that 51 came from the fact that they were content to run the ball when nobody cared if they ran the ball in the second half. And two, they were only averaging 61 yards a game, and their defense statistically was decent. So, and they gave little resistance to Notre Dame all day long. And that's what impressed me is like, again, there was no doubt who the better team was. And that stat right there showed it.
I'm going to have to lean towards holding Boston College to only 56 yards on the ground. I think that's Notre Dame's glaring weakness right now on defense. I think they have a solid defensive line. Obviously, their secondary is very solid, but their linebackers and the ability to fill the run has been the issue. And so when you can you can address those issues and hold a team to only 55 rushing yards after sacks and all that, I still am going to take that because I've seen this running attack before. It's almost kind of expected, unfortunately, as bad of it as 280 on the ground is to say it's expected. I just don't expect the defense to hold a team to 56 rushing yards.
All right. So, all right, whatever. So Steve Angeli didn't play. Some people kind of got triggered by the fact that Angeli didn't play. And it came up at the press conference today. I won't play the soundbite because it's pretty cut and dry. Basically, it comes down to this. He's played in 2 games so far this year. And so where they were with the BC game, you had BC, USC in a bowl game. That's 3. 2 + 3 = 5. You can play in 4 games in a season and still keep your red shirt. So if they had played him, remember, he's the number 2 quarterback. So that if they had played him against Boston College and then something happens to Drew Pine in one of these last 2 games against USC or the bowl game, and Steve Angeli has to play in both of those games, then you're going to burn his red shirt because you decided to give him some junk minutes in the fourth quarter in a blowout game. It would have been nice to get him in, but for that reason, like let's say in 2 years with all this high-end quarterback talent coming in, Steve Angeli decides he wants to go someplace, or let's say whatever. Like, I think it would be doing him a disservice to yank a game away from him just for a few snaps in the second half of a game that you're just blowing out BC.
Well, and that's exactly what it would have been too. It would have been a few snaps because Notre Dame got the ball twice in the fourth quarter, right? They got it 3 times total in the second half. Okay. They scored a touchdown on the first one. And then the second one, they went They turned the ball over on downs, right? Because they went for it on 4th and 1 down there, at the goal line, and then they punted after 3 plays.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to make Steve Angeli better? Handing off in a snowstorm? Number 1, no, I don't think it is. And number 2, you are not preserving his red shirt for the benefit of Notre Dame. You are preserving his red shirt for the benefit of Steve Angeli.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly.
And there's no. You're telling me that burning his red shirt to hand off the ball 7 times
because they're not meaningful enough snaps. Like Steve Angeli is not learning anything, like getting better for the future, like to compete for a job by handing off a few times against Boston College on a couple series in the second half after they put in the number 2 offensive line as well.
Exactly. There was absolutely no point of getting him in that game in particular. Now, if it was a different situation, and let's say Notre Dame they were blowing them out in the third quarter, it was 44-0, right? If it was nice weather and you actually want him to run the offense and all of those different things, and it wasn't going to burn his red shirt, then by all means, go ahead. But the way that game played out and the weather conditions and all that, he is gaining nothing from being in that game at that point. You have to be smart about it because you may need him against USC. You may need him in a bowl game.
Yeah, you need to be smart. You don't know.
You just don't know. Exactly.
I'm just glad that there was a rhyme or reason because I remember watching live and I was like, why is Pine still in there? but obviously I wasn't thinking about the whole red shirt scenario. And yeah, like you guys said, there's just no reason to burn, 3 meaningless drives in the snow on a whole year of eligibility. It's just a disservice to him, who, his development and his career longevity at Notre Dame. And then most importantly, you need him ready, or you need him potentially against USC, because if worse comes to worse and something happens to Pine, that's obviously the very, very more important situation that he would have to play in.
Right. Now, some actual news, I think anyway, speaking of the quarterback front, on the guy who started out the season as the quarterback, Tyler Buchner, injured his shoulder, of course, against Marshall in week 2 of the season. Non-throwing shoulder, but Marcus Freeman said last week, it came up during his Thursday Zoom, that he was doing some stuff at practice, light work, not padded, not, running, full plays and any of that kind of stuff, but doing some different drills. And then at some point, it turned into, well, is Tyler Buchner going to play in the bowl? Could he play in the bowl? And I don't know where all of that started, but I asked Marcus Freeman today if there is a scenario where Tyler Buchner could actually play in Notre Dame's bowl game, considering that's 4 or 5 months away and he's starting to do some stuff. And here's what Marcus Freeman said.
To be determined. Right now our docs are not 100% sure. That will be based on how he progresses over these next couple of weeks. He's practicing more. Obviously there's no contact with him. And so we'll see if it's what's best for him and he can be full go and be able to be healthy and protect himself and prepare for a bowl game, then shoot, no hesitation to give him that opportunity, but that's still to be determined.
So he's definitely saying there's a chance, guys.
Hey.
What do you think?
Go ahead, Jess. I'll let you lead off on this one.
I kind of touched on this a little bit last week. It makes me very weary because you have a lot of momentum going forward right now with the guy who has proven himself as a quarterback. He's 8-1 as a starter. And look at, some of those wins. He has wins over BYU, Syracuse, Clemson, North Carolina, potentially USC. I don't want that to become something that distracts these guys ahead of a bowl game, but then also I would like the competition of it, right? You want to have your best players playing in the bowl game, but at the same time, you don't want any distractions. And kind of what I was saying last week, if Tyler Buchner is truly 100% healthy, I think he deserves a shot. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of people are giving him criticism on how he played against Ohio State and Marshall. And against Ohio State and Marshall, this offensive line, this run game, this coaching staff were nowhere near where they are now. Everyone developed, in these games that he was out. He has not developed. And so that's another thing that plays into the synchronization of an offense. But Tyler Buchner adds a different element to Notre Dame's offense that could only make it better because of with his run game, their run game that they've already established. If he pulls that ball, that is another element that defenses have to worry about in covering him. So if you can definitely say that he makes the offense better, if he's ready to make the offense better and he can make those reads and the synchronization is there, sure, play him, but don't just play him to play him. Drew Pine has proven himself as a starter. He's proven himself as a winner this season. And I think there's something to finishing out the season, with what you have going on. But there's definitely advantage to playing Buchner because he adds another dimension that teams have to worry about or be, cognizant of on defense. And his legs can burn you. He's a very good runner.
Jesse, if you're thinking about running for Senate, I would do it sooner than later while the filibuster is still in effect.
He's not old enough. All right. Went for state senator, I think.
I'll let Vince answer in a second, but just to answer the question that Comedy Lover sent, did we ever establish for sure that a bowl game counts as a game for redshirt purposes? It does. A game is a game is a game, basically.
Right.
It's
right. I don't know where
not
that
regular season and bowl game. That's why a lot of times you see young guys who haven't played much get into a bowl game. It's right. They're all games, just like the stats from bowl games count towards your single season records and all that kind of stuff. It counts as a game. It's you're playing a game. It counts as a game. It's not, a lot of people look at them, the non-playoff games, as quote unquote exhibitions, but it counts for your record. It counts for everything. So yes, it counts.
As far as whether you play Buchner or not, the first question you have to ask yourself, is he 100% healthy? If he's 100% healthy, then the answer is super easy for me. 100% you play him. No question. Now, I'm not saying start him. I'm still giving Drew the start. I'm not starting Tyler Buchner in the bowl game, okay? Drew Pine has led this team. At that point, he'll be 9-1, okay, as a starter. And so
there you go, Vince.
Yeah, baby. You give him the start because he deserves the start, okay? But you play Tyler Buchner, and maybe it looks very similar to what they were doing when Jack Cohn was the starter last year. That's fine. I have no problem with that. In fact, I would actually enhance his package a little bit so that he's actually throwing the football and doing some different things.
Yeah.
Because that's going to give us a lot more of a leg to stand on throughout the offseason when we're talking about who should be the starter next year and all of those different things. See him back there picking apart defenses, doing those things. You 100% play Tyler Buchner. I have no problem with that. If he's 100% healthy, that's the key. If he's 100% healthy, you can't be scared to play him.
Right.
Because if you're scared to play him now, you're going to be scared to play him in the fall. Like
if he's 100%, he's got just as much of risk as anyone of getting hurt.
Right.
Anyone can get hurt on any given play. It's football. It's contact sport.
You can't
operate that way. If they clear him and they say he's 100% and he feels 100%, there's no reason not to. But I agree with what you're saying. I would still start Drew Pine, but I would get Tyler Buchner in relative similar fashion how they did it last year. Get him, a couple series maybe interspersed throughout the game. But then, like you said, he's actually running the offense. He's not just, I'm Tyler Buchner. I'm going to run the ball on this play or whatever. He's running a real series, but get him in there because there's no reason not to. He can still bring a change of pace. And then if you're at a point in that game after you've been playing Buchner for whatever, and, like if it's tight and maybe Drew Pine isn't on his game or, whatever, and Tyler Buchner has excelled, there's no reason not to, stick with him at that point. But as Jess said, the offensive line is a heck of a lot better now than when we saw Tyler Buchner the first time. It's completely different. The running backs have a different confidence about them. Everything. It's a different team right now.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was the starting quarterback. Now, again, if he's 100%, again, I'm not saying starting, but I'm saying get him in there somehow. There's no reason not to. It's not a college football playoff game.
And he's already going to redshirt because he played 2 games and there's only 2 left, right?
Yeah.
So he's already guaranteed to have a red shirt, so you don't have to worry about that, right? So, I am a pretty firm believer, with a few exceptions here and there, that you should not be benched for an injury. You should at least have an opportunity to win your job back. And again, I'm not saying you start him in the bowl game. I'm not saying that.
And now it's
interesting, you got to play him.
Because, somebody said when Jesse was talking, like Jesse said that Pine is, 8-1 as a starter, which is true. But, like as somebody said, that they're not Drew Pine's wins, they're the team's wins. And, there aren't many games where I think you would say they won in spite of Drew Pine. There are a couple games where you'd say, well, of course he contributed, or a couple games where you'd say he contributed to the loss. That's for sure.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not like, like when you look 8-1 record, what's this team built on? It's built on the fact that it's running the heck out of the football right now. They're protecting Drew Pine basically as much as they can. They're asking him to do as little as possible. So while Drew Pine has, they beat Clemson with Drew Pine. So as he has moved into that sort of game manager role, I guess is the best thing, that's essentially what it is he's moved into that. He's comfortable with what he's doing. And there's no reason not to add a different element to the offense if it's available and the guy's healthy.
Right.
I understand that quarterbacks don't win and lose you games. And I'm a big proponent of that because I think too often quarterbacks get the most criticism of wins and losses. But what I will say is that the quarterback position has the most impact on the outcome of a game. A poor quarterback performance is going to lose you games, right? More than anything else, like a poor wide receiver performance, a poor running back performance, a poor quarterback performance has the most impact on the game. And I know he hasn't won, definitely been the reason why he's won you games, but he did a great job against Clemson and what he was able to do with that game plan, how he was, getting in and out of the huddle, all of those things. I know that he doesn't make all the flashy plays with his arms, but there's other ways that quarterbacks win you the game. So my biggest thing, like Vince was saying, I don't want to see him play if he's not 100% ready, and I don't want to see rhythm thrown off. I just want what's best for the team, and I think he can add definitely another dimension with what his packages that he can bring.
But the other part of that is if Buchner is progressing and he's practicing with the team during bowl prep, that gives him extra time to kind of get into whatever rhythm and figure out what he can and can't do and that kind of stuff. Again, as Marcus Freeman, they're not just going to throw him out there to throw him out there. First and foremost, he's going to have to be healthy and he's going to have to be able to do it. And I think it is important to remember it's his non-throwing shoulder. So that's
right. That's true.
That's a pretty important aspect of it as well. Like when you talk about his passing and stuff like that.
And look, of course you don't want to see him get hurt. You don't want that because he needs another full spring, right? And you don't want him to have to go back and have surgery and all of those different things. You don't want that, but you can't coach like that. That's not, you can't coach football. I hope he doesn't get hurt. Like,
yeah,
you just can't. Doesn't work. Doesn't work that way.
Right. Interesting. Jesse sent me this today. The Biletnikoff Award semifinalist list came out, and of course, USC wide receiver Jordan Addison is on that list. It's interesting that he is going to be the fourth receiver who is on this Biletnikoff semifinalist list that Notre Dame has faced this season. You've got Josh Downs from North Carolina, Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, and Zay Flowers made the list as well from Boston College, who we just saw this weekend. Downs, only 5 catches for 32 yards. He did have a couple touchdowns against Notre Dame. Harrison, 5 catches for 56 yards against Notre Dame, and Flowers, 3 for 46. Now, Jordan Addison's going to be a little bit bigger challenge, I think. And I was talking to the USC guy, and we'll have that interview up here on the site within a day or two. But I think the bigger challenge with USC compared to these other teams is the fact that they've got a deeper wide receiver room than some of these other teams.
Nailed it. The other team, yes, Notre Dame did a very good job against those number one receivers. There's no doubt about it. And if that was all that USC had in the passing game, I would feel very confident about Notre Dame shutting him down. The problem is they've got more than just Addison to throw the ball to. They've got some dynamic guys on their offense. And so he is the recipient of a lot of one-on-one coverage, and Notre Dame is going to be tasked to not only stop these receivers, but to stop the guy throwing them the ball. So it's going to be very difficult. I would imagine if I was a betting man, I would say that Addison is going to have the best stats of those 4 guys when it's all said and done. But again, that's because of some of the parts around him that allow him to get those yards.
Jesse, you're muted.
Another reason I sent you that list is, Brock Bowers is on that list as a tight end, despite Michael Mayer having more overall yards, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. That was another big reason I sent it to you. Is one, because yes, 4 Notre Dame wide receivers or 4 wide receivers that Notre Dame have faced are on there. But the fact that Brock Bowers is on there, despite having not as good numbers as Michael Mayer, is one of the biggest disservices. Again, I've seen this season. Ridiculous. I don't understand what the national perception is that Michael Mayer has to prove over Brock Bowers, but it seems like Brock Bowers is getting all this recognition. He's on a Biletnikoff finalist, and it's a wide receiver award, and you're not even putting the best tight end in the country right now in terms of stats on the list. So that's another big reason why I sent that to you, and I probably should have clarified, but
I mean, not to mention the fact that it slipped right by me because I was just scanning and I was like, oh, look at all these guys that Notre Dame has played that's on there. I wasn't even thinking about Brock. And actually, it did cross my mind. I was like, oh, was Mayer on this list possibly somehow? But yeah, there you go. 59 catches, 711 yards. Brock Bowers and 7 touchdowns. Brock Bowers, 41 catches, 625 and 4. The numbers are just ridiculous. And my point was going to be, if not for Michael Mayer, there would be no passing game for this offense.
No doubt.
Like
he means more to his team than what Bowers means to Georgia.
Absolutely, he does.
The only difference is Brock Bowers plays in the SEC.
Yep.
I'll say it.
There it is.
I'm saying it.
Someone needed to say it.
Yeah.
Go back to the Buchner conversation here real quick. Matt Romero says, start Pine, limit the variables. Buchner is the better quarterback, but the staff had to change a lot to get this offense working right. I'd want the only variable to be the other team, not my quarterback situation. I see. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And, this goes back to what we said early in the season as we saw Drew Pine in this, when we saw successful Drew Pine there early on. Completely different offense that he was running than what Tyler Buchner got to run. Just because Tyler Buchner can run doesn't mean they couldn't be running this full offense that they've been running with Drew Pine. That's what they need. He needs that offense, and then you add his dimension of running to go along with it.
You don't need to change your offense because Buchner is at quarterback. You don't.
Exactly.
He needs to run the exact same offense. He's got a stronger arm than Drew Pine. He can throw deep too, right? He can make all the reads that Drew Pine can make. You just add in a little bit of read option here and there, and you've got yourself a more dynamic quarterback.
Exactly.
Period.
Instead of handing the ball off, you pull it every now and then. That's the only difference that you should see.
And you don't have to change anything with the offensive line. You don't have to change anything with the wide receivers, the tight end, nothing. You don't have to change anything. You have a more dynamic guy with the ball in his hands. Period.
Absolutely. Fair point USMA makes. USMA 87. I think Tyler Buchner playing question will come down to what bowl, New Year's 6 versus lower level. Do you guys think it matters what kind of bowl they're playing in when we're talking about this decision potentially?
I honestly don't, because if they're playing in a New Year's 6 bowl, I think the competition is going to be a lot easier than if they play in the lower level bowl. Because if they play in a lower level bowl, they're going to be playing a Pac-12 team, an SEC team, or a Big Ten team. If they play in a New Year's 6 bowl, they're playing UCF, Tulane, or Cincinnati. The competition is going to be tougher if they're playing in a different bowl.
Yeah, that's actually a good point that I hadn't thought about there. It shouldn't really matter the bowl game. It should just be a matter of what's your best chance of success offensively. What's going to get you the most points?
And again, yes, it counts as a game, just like we were talking about with, like the whole eligibility thing and the stats, and it counts on your one-loss record. For example, like we were talking about that, I think it was 2017, the season after, the horrible season, but that they were 9-3 in the regular season. They beat LSU in a bowl game, and they ended up with, that's when the double-digit win streak started, was then, and like that to me, like if they can beat USC this week and then have a chance to win a bowl, that's really the biggest thing going forward, is you've got a chance to keep that double-digit win streak alive and that kind of thing. So, well, guys,
is it time?
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go.
That time.
I think we're gonna have a live one tonight. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so Phil Jurkovec's Instagram comments before the game Saturday.
Just jumping right in.
We are jumping right in. We're going for it. I'm gonna read them so that everyone, like if you haven't heard them, you haven't seen them, whatever, I'm going to read them. So bear with me here for a minute. We want to hear everything, right? We want to get the whole story. Quote, this is from Phil Jurkovec on his Instagram Saturday before the Notre Dame Boston College game. Quote, I always really liked Notre Dame football, despite most of my family having no affiliation or affection for the school. I turned down some great opportunities in order to fulfill my childhood dream of playing on the team, and I thank everyone who helped to make that happen. Good fortune allowed me to meet some incredible people while there, players, coaches, professors, priests, etc. Notre Dame has been a tremendous force for good in the world, and it will continue this excellence because of its good people. Some derogatory comments have come out in the media in regards to my perspective on the place, and I'd like to clarify. Notre Dame holds some of the highest ideals, and these are very difficult to live up to. I don't think the institution practices its stated virtues in all aspects of campus, but I urge it to do so because I think it can be better. I wish many of those I met much success. Anyone close to me knows how badly I'd love to play this game, but I am currently recovering from a diagnosed concussion, broken rib, and sprained MCL. He continues, as it relates to Boston College. And for some reason, that's in quotations, as it relates. Do you know what that means?
100%.
Okay. All right. So,
I'll save it.
Save it. I'll let you answer that here in a second. As it relates to Boston College, even amid a most difficult year, I have never been more proud to represent the school. The adversity we faced has molded and strengthened me. We're primed for success, and it will come soon to the heights on Eagles' wings. Although it's been a famine of a season, we should know that it brings no fear. Let's remember that Boston College was founded for and by Irish immigrants. Notre Dame de Lac was founded by the French, something they teach you in first-year Moreau. The Dropkick Murphys were started in Boston, and their song For Boston is our fight song. They sing, I'm shipping up to Boston, and definitely not I'm shipping up to South Bend. So if you're in that stadium and you cheer when that song comes on before kickoff, know that you are either rooting for BC or otherwise supporting cultural appropriation. But in the words of Mac, it ain't nothing but a brand name, end quote. So that is from Phil Jurkovec from his Instagram statement. Vince, start me off then. So what is the as it relates? What's the meaning of that?
A very, 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 very common phrase that Brian Kelly would always use. It's a total shot right at Brian Kelly, 100%. He always said that as it relates to this, that was like one of his catchphrases.
Okay.
That he would always, so that's a shot at Brian Kelly.
I was going to say, the one I remember the most is just look, like he would start a sentence off with, look, we're going to do, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, he said that a lot.
Again, I mean, the man is not here anymore.
Right. 100%. I'm just saying
start and go to Jesse. Vince, start and go to Jesse. Go ahead. So tell me what you think, boys.
Oh, so the first paragraph, the first part that you read, you know what? That's fine. You want to get that out? It's your Instagram page. You go right ahead. Whatever. The only problem I have with that part is you did the exact same thing this summer when he had that article out and the whole thing, got it off his chest, whatever. He did that already. So, but whatever. The first paragraph's fine. The second paragraph, I felt like he wrote the first paragraph and then came back to the second paragraph after a hard night of partying or something, because it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And obviously I'm joking around a little bit, but at the same time, like the cultural appropriation thing with the music and all of that, like, what are you even talking about? Like, it doesn't, because you play a song, you have to be that nationality. Like,
right.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all. So the second paragraph was weird. The first paragraph is how he feels. Okay. And he's not wrong. There's a ton of institutions out there that claim one thing and they can all do a better job. Right. I have no problem with that. Zero.
Right.
Zero problem with that. There's plenty of people at Notre Dame I have a problem with. Right. And that's okay. The second paragraph was just weird.
Yeah, I a lot of what Vince said, I agree on. I think that he should have just ended it after the first paragraph. The second paragraph just seemed to be more of a stretch and kind of to prove another point of him. But ultimately, what I'll say is this. It felt like Phil had to get one more shot off, right? He couldn't play. He had to get the final statement in. He knew what was coming to Boston College yesterday. He knew that they were the inferior opponent. Things haven't been going well. And that's what it just felt like. It's like when you're in an argument with someone and someone's always got to kind of get the last word. It felt like Phil was really fighting to get his last word. Obviously it brings back a lot of memories, emotions, Boston College coming to Notre Dame. There's just a lot that comes around it. But I like what Vince said. It felt like he wrote the first paragraph and then came back to it like a week later and wrote the second paragraph because he knew he wanted to say something more, but he didn't know how to quite finish.
Yeah, and another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, and the whole, like, to end it on the words cultural appropriation, I thought that was a very, very big stretch. I was like, come on, man. Like, really, that's how you're going to, sum up this whole thing, is that it's cultural appropriation if you cheer for Notre Dame inside, because they're technically playing a Boston College song inside Notre Dame Stadium. Like, it felt.
I wonder if they taught him that in first year Moreau as well. Like,
like what actually cultural appropriation is.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It just all felt like a stretch. And again, that he wanted to get the last word because of, things haven't gone right for him. And the end of his career is also kind of not ending how it wants to.
See, and this is where we are. And like, here's what I remember about the start of his career. Like, for starters, do you remember his first spring, Vince, when he played in the blue gold game and he was
running all
sacked
over.
all those times in the blue gold game because the rules of the game were he had to, they wanted him to stay in the pocket. They didn't want him running. And it was like 2-hand touch to sack the quarterback. And I was there when he talked to the media afterwards, and he was literally despondent. He was just broken down because poor Phil Jurkovec wasn't allowed to play his game. Like, they changed the rules, and Phil Jurkovec, it was just a bad day for Phil. He literally looked like he wanted to cry sitting there. And as an 18-year-old, okay, you're 18 years old. You're just out of high school. I get it. You've got all this ability. You want to show your stuff, whatever. It wasn't because he had a bad game, though. It was because they tweaked the rules of the game, and it didn't suit his skills, which means it didn't suit Phil Jurkovec. Again, 5 years ago, I guess, almost at this point. So, okay, whatever. But then, of course, he transfers after 2 years, which is fine. A lot of guys transfer. There's stuff that happened behind the scenes that not everybody knows about. I get that. Things happened, but he moves on. But, like Joe Burrow went to LSU. He wasn't throwing stones at Ohio State. He just, won a national championship, won a Heisman, smoked a cigar, did his walk-off, and he's in the NFL. It's like, let your play do the talking, Phil. You shouldn't need to do this at this point. We get it. You're hurt. But, and that's the thing, really, is it's like he's hurt and he wants to lash out once again. He airs it out over the summer in the newspaper article. It's his right.
Right. Yep.
He did it. I had no problem with it. Very rarely do you see college kids actually come out and actually say something. Everyone
and get an opportunity, and get an opportunity, right? I mean, he was rolled out the red carpet on this one,
Yeah. And it's just like a case of unrequited love. It seems like it's like he loved Notre Dame. Notre Dame just didn't love him enough back, and obviously Brian Kelly didn't love him enough back, because if that's the shot, and I didn't even pick up on that at first, but that's the shot at Brian Kelly. He's still taking shots at Brian Kelly, who's at LSU now. Like, who is your grudge with? Who's your beef against? That's what I don't get, and then like you read the stuff about, the Irish founding Boston College and the French founding Notre Dame. Well, thanks for the history lesson, Phil, I guess. It's like, to me, it's like the whole thing, he talks about the virtues and just like what you said, Vince, it doesn't matter what school, what company, what corporation, like the farther you go in life, there's always going to be somebody or something that represents themselves as one thing. Always. But then the deeper you look, it's not quite, that same thing. And that's it. Just Phil just hasn't come to grips with this. It seems like someone just needs to put their arm around him and say, look, I love you, kid. It's time to move on. Right. like the, it's like he needs the Robin Williams treatment. It's not your fault, Phil. It's not your fault. Now go see about a girl someplace. That's what it comes down to. And like the cultural appropriation thing with the song, like, did Notre Dame also culturally appropriate, and the rest of the sports world basically culturally appropriate the Seven Nations Army thing because the White Stripes are from Detroit? Like, did the Kansas City Chiefs culturally appropriate Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones because the Stones are from London? Like, people play songs in stadiums. I don't get why. Like, it just feels like a bunch of nanny boo boo stuff. And he's trying to be the smartest guy in the world, in the room, and like show us, I know better than all of you guys. And it's just it's like, you're a good quarterback. We get it. You're hurt, but you're 23 years old at this point. And just like we said with that newspaper article, he already said what needed to be said. If he had left this at the end of that first paragraph, it's like, take the high road. Right. That's what whoever should be telling him. Just take the high road in all of this and move on.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, moral of the story, the man's heart is hurt. And I think that's the biggest point. Yep.
But it's been 3 years. Time's supposed to heal all wounds, man. Let it go.
Right.
Let it go. And the fact, I don't know all the facts and I don't know the whole story, but his beef is with Brian Kelly. And I know there's some beef with Tommy Rees, right? I mean, there's reasons
Right.
he left.
But
right?
most of it's
He's
with Brian
gone.
Kelly, I thought.
He's gone. He's not even there anymore.
Yes. That's what I don't get. That's what I don't
brutal.
get. So Marcus Freeman, after the game, was asked about his team overcoming the bumps in the road that they've had this year. And I'm going to read another quote here. Quote, "They're resilient. We've got a lot of resilient group of leaders." And I think I said this to Zara post-game, is that this university attracts resilient people. If you're not a resilient person, you're not going to make it here. And that's something that I've learned in my short time here. This place weeds out non-resilient people, this university. And it even happens in the football program. If you're not a resilient, tough-minded person, this probably at some point, won't be the place for you. And you'll say, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else. But that's what this university attracts, resilient people. And we're fortunate we get to coach great football players that are resilient people. So I think that's a reflection of this university, end quote, from Marcus Freeman. So I'm curious your thoughts on this, guys.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, so when I heard it initially, I didn't think too much of it, but then the more I kind of looked at it and the more I listened to it or read through it a couple of times, it seems like it was very kind of pointed at maybe some of the events that led up to that game. And
that's what I'm thinking as I'm listening to this. But, there's never anything asked about Phil, but it sure sounded like a subtweet toward Phil, right?
I think it checked a lot of different boxes. I think it did, it accomplished that. It accomplishes where they are right now. And I just overall, you have to be a strong-minded person to play at Notre Dame, more so than your athletic ability. And that's kind of what we saw with Phil, is like he didn't have the mental strength to kind of overcome, the physical limitations that he was going through. And whether you want to say that was a direct shot or not, it fits the shoe in that situation. It felt like, Freeman was just saying that we have very strong and resilient players, and that's kind of what's going to separate us from a lot of these other teams, is not only are our guys very athletic, but they're also very smart and very strong-willed and very strong-minded at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with Phil personally, because Marcus Freeman wasn't here for Phil Jurkovec. It's off his radar, in my opinion. I don't think.
Well, he might not have been here, but the comments came out that morning.
There's only one guy left that was here when he was here. One. And
that doesn't mean he can't have an opinion on it.
I get it, but I don't think I just think he's got way too many fish to fry to worry about a guy that wasn't even here when he was here, that he doesn't even know at all. I think it was pointed at the guys that are currently on his roster, and I think it's pointed at the recruits that are out there. Like, he's sending a message. Like, look, we take a certain kind of guy here. And if, for lack of a better term, as one former LSU coach once said, if you don't have the chest to be here, then we don't need you here. Like, you got to be a certain kind of person to be at the University of Notre Dame, play on our team. So I think it was a message sent to his current team and then future recruits coming to his team.
Yeah, I just look at this place weeds out non-resilient people.
I mean, it could have been a veiled
shot. If you're not a resilient, tough-minded person, this probably won't be the place for you, and you'll say, hey, I'm going to go someplace.
It very well could have been a veiled remark towards the people that have left since he's been there. I just don't think he's going that far back in the machine.
I would say this, like Marcus Freeman, I think, is aware of, we got to remember this guy is 36 years old. So he's grown up more in a social media age than you or I, like he's closer to Jesse, basically he's right between you and Jesse. He's kind of in that, in that center space. He seems very aware of a lot of things. So you're right. Like, he didn't know Phil Jurkovec. He wasn't here for Phil Jurkovec, but like anybody else who got up in the morning, and saw that Phil Jurkovec fired this off the day that Notre Dame and Boston College are playing a football game. Could it be about recruiting as well? I think it could, because he is also a very good recruiter, and he can also know that maybe some of his recruits are on Instagram and probably saw this, like you had former Notre Dame people, for that matter, commenting on the Jurkovec thing, so
it could have very well been a response to that, but maybe not directed at Phil. Right, I think that's a good point that you make. Like, he put that out there.
I don't think he was talking to Phil.
Right, exactly.
I think it was responding potentially to that.
I could get on board with. That part I could get on board
with. And that's what maybe, like when I said the subtweet, like he wasn't talking directly to Phil, but
Right.
it was like,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. I could see that.
And there were a lot of different things this could mean, but
Yeah, do you guys think the weather plays into that because of how well that they performed in the cold, the snow? That's resiliency. That's tough-minded stuff. You have to want to play in that stuff. You have to accept that that's what's going to happen. And it just didn't look like they lost a step, right? It looked like that stuff had no phase on their game. So that was another aspect, just kind of sitting here thinking that I think was another maybe way that it could have been, put out there as well.
Could have been. Yeah.
Fill in the blank, guys. Vince, I'll start with you on this one. Notre Dame's 21 and 31 offensive personnel groups are blank.
What make the world go round, baby? We need to see more of it. That is a matchup nightmare for teams against Notre Dame, period. There are not a lot of teams that can go 3 deep at the running back position and it be a matchup nightmare for defenses. Notre Dame can do that. They need to continue to do that, period.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Vince a little bit, but 21 and 31 offensive personnel groups are a defense/linebackers worst nightmare. It creates, and when you put Tyree out there as a former middle linebacker, the last thing you want to do is see that man wheel out of the backfield, because guess what? That means you have that guy one-on-one, and he is one of the fastest players on the field. And yes, he can catch the ball. He can wheel. He can do, anything that you want. So it is a defensive, and more specifically linebacker matchup nightmare. When you have to, and when these linebackers have to already worry about getting punched in the mouth by the offensive line and the run game, and now you throw in a wrinkle of potentially having to cover a running back out of the backfield one-on-one. It is it is Notre Dame's most lethal weapon on offense right now, and it needs to be utilized more. I love seeing the 31 personnel package. You've seen all the backs go in different, motions, different ways. It is just instant chaos for the defense. It just throws off every single read. And yeah, I just wish that we could, we talk about it every week, but I just wish that we could see more of it, because it is a nightmare matchup nightmare, like Vince said.
Yeah, I can't imagine the look on my face, Vince, when that 31 person, I've got my binoculars and I'm like, 31!
You couldn't even get it out.
There's 3 backs out there, and then boom, the pass. Tommy Reese is just a playa, man. He is like that girlfriend or that boyfriend who, like, you're on the fence with, are you going to stay or are you going to go? And then they do something, a little nice thing for you, and they pull you back in, and it's, I just love you, baby. And then, I look back at my game notes and I see 21 personnel, Diggs for 26 yards. And then it's like your middle school crush just passed you one of those little notes, with the, do you want to go to the dance, check yes or no, thing. And, of course you're going to check yes, because now, you're back in, and the next thing you know, it's 31 personnel, and all these running backs are on the field, and not just on the field, it's an offset I formation out of the shotgun, and it's 28 yards of pass play to Logan Diggs. And it's, again, I'm like bouncing in my chair out there. And then, it's like, I'll go to the Valentine's dance with you, Tina, and the dance was great and the best dance ever. But then the next thing you know, Tommy's back in love with 12 personnel. I get it. It works. It's reliable, all that stuff. But 12 just ain't as sexy as 21, baby. And I don't care how young you were. I'm ready to propose. And, if you keep teasing me with all that, high cut 31 skirt stuff. So, like, just stop dragging my heart around right now. Let's go. Let's grab that net and catch that beautiful butterfly. I'm ready to go. Just give me more of it. Inject it right here with the 21 and 31. Like, every time, with very few exceptions, that they do something out of that, it's a big play to one of those running backs. It's just like, you cannot stop it because of what Jesse said. It's a total mismatch.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that will redeem Tommy in this season and not utilizing it, if he can confidently say, I was saving it for USC, right? Like, this is the game. You're going to pull it out, and you're creating all these matchups, and you're scoring a lot of points, because look how many points USC gave up last week to UCLA. This is the game where you have nothing left. Empty the tank. Show me all that you got with 21 and 31 personnel. Show me. You tell me you're this creative guru. Show me how creative you can get with 21 and 31, because it is going to give you It is going to give you the best chance in the passing
Yes.
game this week. It is going to give you, for what your offense can do and what Pine can do, it is going to give you your best passing opportunity.
Make them stop it, because who
Yep.
stopped it? The only times that it's been stopped were, again, like they ran that little, like the shovel pass or jets, whatever that was, to Chris Tyree, and it didn't do much. And I think they ran one to Diggs and it didn't do much. But when they throw out of it, especially, it's like boom, right down.
I wish I kept a tracker, because I'm almost confident that you could say they average like at least 20 yards per play when they use multiple back sets.
I wouldn't doubt it. The only thing that kills the average is like the 5-yard touchdown to Tyree last week against Navy.
Right. Because he had to stop running.
Yeah.
Bad choice. The play was over.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's just we keep talking about it. Total mismatch. And I tell you what, man, it's like what are they going to do? And I guess it's still considered an offset eye, even though the guy's in the shotgun. I don't know if you would call it like pistol with an extra back, or, I don't know exactly what you would call that. But it's like when I was starting off doing like calling high school games, you would see like offset eye formation type stuff.
Yeah.
It was, like back in the 90s and stuff like that. And it was like, like you talk about, you talk about Tommy Reese's imagination. Like that's right. Where it shows.
Here we go.
He can just eat defenses up with that all day long.
There's no excuse for this week, because there was almost 100 points scored in that game. Almost 100 points. Like, you've got to be able to score on this USC defense.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're going to score themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And I've got a lot of faith in Notre Dame's defense, but USC is going to score. So you've got to score more points than them. It is time to unload the playbook. All right. It's time to unload it. I want to see the imagination. Okay.
I agree. So with the college football playoff set to expand in the next few years, there's discussion about whether the first round games, will be played on campus host sites in the month of December. Here's what Marcus Freeman said when I asked him about that today.
A team in South Bend, Indiana, for a playoff game, and would be very hopeful that the weather was like last Saturday. That's an advantage for us, I feel.
That's what I said. I said, hey, you just got done playing in that weather. You want to do that again? So Marcus Freeman is all in favor of it. Surprisingly, I've seen stuff on social media. I think social media about like people not liking this idea of like, especially playing cold weather games in college football playoff games. What do you think, Vince?
All right. So number one, with the way that things are going to go, Notre Dame cannot be in the top 4. They cannot get a bye. So if they're in the playoff, they are most likely going to be hosting. Okay. There is no more of a home field advantage if you're in the North than playing at home, right? And it's not just for Notre Dame. It's anybody in the North.
Michigan could host, Ohio State could host, Wisconsin, whoever it happens,
right?
Yeah.
You want that home field advantage. You want there to be a benefit to you being the higher seed and hosting, okay? If Notre Dame's not allowed to get a bye, the best they can do is host. I want an advantage if I'm hosting. So 100% you have those on campus. Are you kidding me? Why would you want to take Notre Dame's home field advantage and take it to San Diego or Florida or one of these other bowl sites? No way. I don't like that at all. I want those on campus, period.
I think first and foremost, we need to recognize the quality of questions that were thrown out there today. Seems like you were just a question machine up there, getting all your questions in. So
2. Everybody gets 2 per week. I asked the Buchner question. I asked the playoff question. I felt like they were 2 solid questions today. So.
I was saying so too. There was no sarcasm in that answer. But like Vince said, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to bring a SEC team, a Texas school, a Pac-12 school in the middle of South Bend in the middle of December? Like those guys are. It's going to be instant, complaining like that. They're not built to play in that. They don't play in it all season. They play the lowest they get to is what? Maybe like 60 degrees, 50 degrees, maybe. Right. And so it's like if you throw in 30, 20 degrees and a little bit of adverse weather, that's just another advantage that you have. And when you're talking about an entire season, you're talking about the playoff, you should be rewarded for your entirety of your work. And that's definitely an advantage that comes by being the home team for a playoff game. So I'm all for it, and there's no other side of the coin, in my opinion. There's nothing that can convince me otherwise.
I wasn't sure if he would say, well, it's a playoff game. It's a very important game. You don't want to play it in the cold and that kind of thing. Like Gene Smith at Ohio State, the athletic director down there, last year when it came up the first time, he said, I think we'd rather play like at Lucas Oil Field, in the Dome, so that you don't have to get your field ready. He talked about all this different stuff. But then he came back this year and said, on second thought, I would like to play at home. I think the question is I favor it as well. Like, especially if you're Notre Dame, using Notre Dame as an example, because of what you said, they're never going to get a first round bye in this new format, and that's kind of the compromise that Jack Swarbrick had to make to get them to expand to 12, because he wanted it to be 12. So it gives Notre Dame greater access to the playoff. Well, part of this as well, if you're not going to get a bye, you're going to have to play first round games. And so if you've got a chance to play at home and have an advantage like that against a team from the South, you got to take it. What's going to be interesting, I think, is, you've got the Big Ten and you've got Notre Dame, who aren't necessarily usually partners in much. Big 12, not a whole lot of teams up north, especially ones that are probably going to be making the playoff. So my point is, will all these warmer weather conferences vote for something like this, knowing that maybe, some of these teams up north, whether it's a Big Ten school or Notre Dame, could have an advantage like that? Would they vote to do that? Would that be enough to keep them from voting it down? Because the other side of this is everyone who gets to host has a chance for more revenue out of the deal. So I think that'll probably go farther.
It'll be interesting to see, because Jack Swarbrick does have a lot of sway when it comes to these decisions. And so he's already made a gigantic concession by saying, hey, we don't even need a bye. That's a huge concession. And if I'm him, I'm like, look, we already gave that up. We gave that to you. We gave you the first round bye. Has to be a conference champion. Okay, great. We at least get a home game.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. I mean, again, he's got a lot of sway when it comes to this. He was involved in making this thing happen. I think he's going to have a lot of sway.
And I initially did not like, the model that they're going to end up going to, what we're talking about, the 12 teams, basically just the exact format that they're going to end up going to when they do expand, because of the fact that Notre Dame was never going to get to be a top 4. But again, when you look at it, when you go from 4 teams to 8 teams, that's much greater opportunity. And like, if you're looking, what's a priority for Notre Dame? Long-term independence, right? And if that is your stated number one goal, to be able to remain independent, then you absolutely need this 12-team format. And that was a concession that's worth making if that's what your priority is.
Yep, no doubt.
I think a lot of people made a good point in the chat. There's a reason why Notre Dame always plays USC in October, and there's a reason why Notre Dame always goes to USC in the last game of the season.
November.
Because USC doesn't want to play in the cold. So
they should have joined the Big Ten.
And that's a subject for another day. We'll address that, because I do think that is, those two things are connected. If you're going to be playing in the Big Ten, you're going to be on the road some in November. And if you can go on the road to Ohio State, basically anywhere in the Big Ten, if you can go on the road anywhere in the Big Ten in November, you can come to South Bend in November.
Right. And, you watch the last game of the season. Well, no, it depends on what they do with Notre Dame, obviously, as far as USC is concerned. You watch that last game of the season. It's going to be it's going to be UCLA and USC, last game of the season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That way they're guaranteed to be in California.
Yeah. What was interesting, when I talked to RJ Abadia, the USC guy yesterday, he told me that because of this scheduling arrangement, the every other November that USC and Stanford have with Notre Dame, have you ever noticed that USC and Stanford always play relatively early in September every year?
I did not.
It is because of the Pac-12 basically told them, well, if you want that weekend free, Thanksgiving weekend every other year, you've got to play each other in September. That's like part of the deal. So yeah, I found that very interesting. Yeah. The entire playoff is a money grab. I mean, that's ultimately why everyone else is expanding.
They're arguing between a top 8 or a top 12.
Yeah.
It's all money, guys. It's all based on money.
Yeah. And it's already decided. So you might as well
Right.
not even argue about whether it's going to be 8 because it's going to be 12. So fill in the blank. It's blank that Benjamin Morrison now has 5 interceptions in the last 3 games. Jesse, start us.
It's completely bonkers that Benjamin Morrison now has 5 interceptions in 3 games. And I'll tell you why, because it would be impressive if this was like any player, more so like a 5th-year guy, a grad transfer guy, a guy that's been in the system for 3 or 4 years. He's got the experience under his belt. But no, he is making plays as a true freshman. This is a true freshman that had 3 interceptions in 1 game. And to me, that is the most impressive part about all of this. Is a freshman cornerback. This is first year in a defense. All of it. You take all of that combined, and then you start, his performance has been well. But then when you start throwing in the cherries on top of interceptions, creating extra possessions for your offense, and he's just a freshman, that's what makes this bonkers to me. Is I just kept looking over to my friend on Saturday and saying, this is a true freshman. Like this isn't a grad transfer. This isn't a 4th-year guy. This is a true freshman that is just willingly taking the ball away from other teams. And quite frankly, I just don't understand why, because once again, what success has been proven that throwing at him is going to accomplish you anything. I think literally it's just teams don't think he can continue to do it because he is so young. It's like, oh, well, we've seen him do it on tape, but he's got to mess up, right? He's young. He's due to mess up. He's not messing up, everyone. He's going to continue to make plays.
It's amazing. I mean, and frankly, it's stupidity on the part of defensive coordinators.
Yes.
I mean, period. What do you do? Why do you keep throwing at him? Why 3 interceptions? You should have stopped throwing at him maybe after 2. Maybe. I don't know. But that's just, come on, guys. You got to be smarter than this. It's going to be very interesting. Again, USC is very deep. They're across the board. So I think all of the DBs are going to get picked on to a degree at some point or another. But you can't possibly think, let's go after the true freshman. I mean, that can't be your game plan.
They threw at him on the very first play of the game. Like that was a game plan. Find 20 and throw that direction. Of course, it's incomplete. And then a couple plays later, he gets the first of his 3 interceptions. And then he picks another, like, what are you doing? Like, there's a very simple solution. If you don't want the ball intercepted at this point, because let's remember, 2 interceptions against Clemson, 3 against Boston College. It was Navy in between. They pass more than they usually do, but they still don't pass that much. So it's like if you're playing a real opponent, maybe he gets 1 or 2 more in between. And the solution is simple. Stop throwing in his direction if you don't want it intercepted.
Right.
I don't know why it has to be that difficult, but
bigger question. And I hope maybe if it's later in the week, potentially just let me know. But what do we think about Morrison traveling with Addison? Do you think that's a thing, or you just kind of keep your defense with how it's been, just whoever lines up, who lines up? Or are you making a conscious effort to move Morrison around based on matchups?
It's not how they play defense. They play sides. Yeah. They're not gonna shadow anybody. So you just stick with what you're doing. You stay, Yeah.
All right.
Yep. I agree. Notre Dame now has won 28 games over ACC teams and 19 straight games in the month of November. Which is the bigger deal, Vince?
I think it's the November games because that's when it matters. Not that the entire season doesn't matter, because it does. I mean, we've seen it a million times. But if Notre Dame would have lost only to Ohio State, they'd be in the playoff right now, or they'd be in the conversation, right? And so the November games are what matters. When you lose late, it affects you more than if you lose early. And the ACC hasn't proven anything to me that they're a great conference as far as football is concerned. Maybe they're a little bit deeper than some of the other conferences, right? Maybe, some of their middle teams are better than the middle teams of other conferences. Okay. But winning in November is way more important to me than just winning against ACC teams.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Vince for a lot of the same reasons. Winning in November is far more important, especially when you're a team that's continuously going after college football playoff spots late in the season. It is most crucial that you end on a winning streak, because you get that momentum. You're showing the committee you have that momentum, and you just wait for someone else to fall down, right? Like there's all these 1-loss, 2-loss teams in front of Notre Dame right now, and they just continue to win. And the more they lose, they're just going to continue to jump over people. And so in terms of finishing out a season and playing your best football, getting the highest ranking possible, it is obviously more important that the record in November is better. And if they win this week, 20 wins, that's for you average about 4 games every November. That's 5 straight seasons of not losing in November. So I think that is a very, very good sign of where the football program has been, over the years. And it's just a standard now, which is nice to see. They're always finishing the season on their best foot.
The 28 straight over ACC teams, that helps pave your road to get into playoff contention at the end of the season. The 19 straight November, that punches your ticket into being in there, and great teams win in November. That's basically what it comes down to. And especially when there is no December, unless you're in a bowl game for Notre Dame, December, January, whatever it happens to be, you've got to finish it off in November. So I agree with everything you guys said. I don't have much more to add. It's about November, closing out the season strong. What did the old segment used to be, Vince? Finish strong. Remember those days?
I do. And we did every time.
We did, baby. Roy Boy, yes, this is a Cowboys shirt. You can see the top of the star there. He says his nemesis, he's got the San Francisco 49ers. Well, not your nemesis last year when you kicked our butts in the playoffs, but it has to give him credit for the butt kicking that they put on Minnesota yesterday. Speaking of which,
that's apropos right there.
Fair or foul? CBS cutting away from the Cowboys-Vikings game in the third quarter because the Cowboys were dominating the Vikings so badly. Jesse, you must have been watching live when it happened. So what did you think? What do you think?
I thought it was funny. I was actually watching on the ticket, so it didn't cut away for me. But it's basically if you were in a live CBS market, that's the national game of the week that you got, then they did cut you away to go to Steelers and Bengals. And I think it's completely fair. When a game when it's national game of the week and a team is kicking another team's butt and it's clearly not a game and you have another game.
I heard they did this even in Dallas, though. I heard they did it in Dallas even. They cut away from the Cowboys game.
That's kind of crazy. Dallas market's foul. Every other market, fair. Because they just went to the game. The Steelers had already beaten the Bengals twice. The Bengals are kind of reeling, trying to get back and win the division. It's a rivalry game. I think it's fair that they cut to it. I just think it's funny that Minnesota got dominated like that to the point that it was even an option that they could cut away from the game.
I don't remember them doing that very often. Well, part of the reason is NFL games aren't usually blowouts. So
you're not really mopping up people like they did yesterday.
Right. So it's fair because frankly, if I am just an impartial fan, which I would have been in this case, right? I want to see good football. And if you're getting dominated, that's not a good football game. Now, if you're a Cowboy fan, it's good football because you want to see it, obviously. Right.
Ed says they didn't cut away in Dallas. Okay. That's just what I had heard. This morning.
So I want the best game possible if I'm just watching football, right? So I think it's fair. I think they did the right thing. I was going to say foul for you, Sean, but sorry, I can't.
Yeah, I was at a basketball game anyway, so I wasn't, around when it happened. But I walk in and I'm thinking I'm going to, because I had a bunch of stuff to do because, I've always got the game recording. I was going to come home. I didn't even have time to watch it, but I figured, well, I'll sit down and I'll at least watch the fourth quarter. And then I turned it on and I'm like, is it already over? They're showing the Steelers and the Bengals. What is this? And so that was kind of that. If I was watching live, and I didn't the bigger question for me, because remember the whole thing with the ticket last week when the Bills-Vikings game went overtime and it bled into the start of the Cowboys game. True. So they didn't show the start of the game. And then I go to the Sunday ticket channel and it won't let me watch it there because it's blacked out because it's supposed to be on national TV. So they're going to flip this game in the national window. Would I have been able to go to my Sunday ticket channel and watch it? Probably not, based on what happened last week. So that would have really ticked me off. Because look, if you were watching Notre Dame beat the snot out of Boston College Saturday night and you haven't got to see them, beat up on teams a whole lot, plus it's a snow game and everything else, maybe you decide you want to walk away, but maybe you decide you just want to relish it and watch it a little bit. That's where I would have been, and I would be ticked off if my game got preempted for a game that I don't care about a full quarter early. So
yeah, I mean, I watched it to the end. I relished all of the butt kicking that went on, especially after the collapse against the Packers the week before and all this hype around the Vikings. So I just enjoyed it because of what it was. The Cowboys, just like Notre Dame, don't really blow out a lot of people, right? A lot of their games come down to the fourth quarter, a lot of, last second drives. And so to see them actually dominate a really good team was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. Your favorite sports aspect of the Thanksgiving weekend is blank.
It's football all day on Thursday. I mean, there's only so much family I can handle, and I enjoy having that game on in the background. My father-in-law is obviously a Lions guy,
True.
So there's always his team on. So we always get to make fun of the Lions, so that's always fun. And there's been some decent matchups, and then obviously the last few years they've added the Thursday night one as well, right? There's 3 games. Obviously, there's 3 games on. I love it, man. Bring on football and food. And I just love to sit there and fall asleep watching football.
My favorite aspect of Thanksgiving weekend, honestly, is the rivalry Saturday. I love all of the matchups. I love Auburn, Alabama. I love Michigan, Ohio State. I love, USC, Notre Dame. There's usually large implications that go with a lot of these games. It always comes down to kind of determining these last, who are the last couple of teams that are going to be left out of the college football playoff. And especially, I know a lot of people would probably expect me to say Cowboys on Thanksgiving, which is obviously up there. I like to get my Thanksgiving meal in, take a little nap, have my leftovers for the Cowboys game. It's nice, tradition. But Cowboys suck on Thanksgiving, it seems, as of recent, and it's been miserable to watch them on Thanksgiving, and I just don't want to do it anymore. I wish they didn't even play on Thanksgiving anymore because it seems like I'm set up for failure every year.
I'm tired of being around. Go ahead. Sorry. I'll let you finish.
I'm just more so looking forward to college football this year.
I'm with you because I'm tired of being miserable on Thanksgiving.
It ruins my Thanksgiving.
With casual fans watching, and I care about what's going on in this game, and the Cowboys have just let us down. I don't know how many Thanksgivings in a row at this point. Remember the Raiders game on Thanksgiving last year? That
got blown out by Josh Allen on Thanksgiving.
There you go. 2 years ago. I'm tired of being
embarrassed
miserable.
by Cam Newton on Thanksgiving against the Panthers.
See, Jesse's just going to rattle them all off. And
this Giants game feels like a trap game, considering they're 7-3.
I don't want it.
There's a wild card spot.
I suppose it's good because I'll be in the Bahamas, and the women's basketball team is playing at the same time as the Cowboys game. So I don't even know if we're going to get TV down there. What kind of TV?
Is there football down in the Bahamas? Is that a thing?
And if we get it, I'll probably get to watch the fourth quarter at best. The Leon Lett game. Jesse's too young for that one.
I think you are banned from watching games considering you missed the Vikings game, and that's the outcome that we got.
Here's a question Timothy had. Little bonus question. Is Braden Lindsey good enough for the NFL, but has just had bad quarterback play?
He could make a roster with that speed.
Absolutely.
He could definitely make a training camp roster,
get
his opportunity. And if that's the case he wants to make, well, guess what? NFL quarterbacks are a lot better. So show what you can do. Use that speed. I think he's definitely got a shot. It's just a matter of what he does with the shot because he's got the speed to play in the NFL, and that's half the battle.
I don't have any more to add to that. I think that's exactly right. Yep. He's got the speed to at least, even if he doesn't get drafted, and he does have another year. He does have a year of eligibility remaining.
That's true. And they could use him. I mean, they could definitely use him. There's no doubt about that. They could use him. They'll ask him back. I almost guarantee it.
But I mean, he can, with the speed that he has, he's not going to get to go probably, down to the combine unless he comes back for another year and gets an invite to he definitely, the combination of everything has played against him this year, like the quarterback play, all these different things that, there's some different things at play. But I think that with the speed that he's got, he has a good pro day. He's got a chance to at least, get an invite or get a non-drafted free agent sign after the draft, that kind of thing. Get into a camp.
I got one. I've got a question for you guys off the cuff. You ready?
Okay.
Former Notre Dame wide receiver Chris Fink was at the LSU game on Saturday, as opposed to being at senior day for Notre Dame football.
Man,
fair or foul? He put this on his Twitter account. Fair or foul that the Holtz's Heroes Foundation Twitter account replied "Et tu, Brute"?
And I think I know who runs the Holtz's Heroes Twitter.
I think account. I do too.
So I am with him. I am with him on that. You cannot. Come on. You can't show up at LSU. Come on.
Brutal. You got an opportunity to go to a college football game and you're going to LSU as opposed to your alma mater on senior day. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Et tu, Brute.
Guys, great one tonight. We covered a lot, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Feel good about it.
That's right, because we got no show tomorrow. So
that's right.
We got to make sure we bring the heat today.
So the rest of the week, we have no idea what it's going to look like. Oh, Jesse, where did he go? There he is. He's back. He was out and in. Excuse me. Rest of the week, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We do know there will not be an IB Nation Sports Talk tomorrow. There will be a college football playoff ranking show.
I'm not sure what time, because I'm not sure what time the show, the rankings come out.
Right.
So.
And Brian's going to have his regular, they're going to do the other shows during the day. Thanksgiving, I know Brian was talking about doing a pre-recorded show to air on Thanksgiving. Some people might be getting you might get in the Derek doghouse, like if you're listening to IB on Thanksgiving Day. I don't know, but I mean, it's good for us. But, I think what we're talking about, if my internet cooperates, we might do a mailbag on Wednesday. And we're talking about maybe a rapid fire only show on Friday that we would put out before Countdown Saturday morning.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
As long as we're not recording it or going live during the men's soccer game at 1:00, Sean. USA.
This is once in every 4 years.
Well, and if you're in the United States, it's one every 8 years.
Yeah. Maybe we need to plan on noon would be our goal and be done by then.
I know, right?
Big match after the draw today. Got to beat England.
Right.
Brutal.
Because if we do it, it's going to be all, pretty much geared up for USC and that whole thing.
I'm excited.
So, yeah. All right. Well, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. If we don't talk to you before then, there's a chance. But again, I'm leaving, call it a humble brag if you want, for the Bahamas in the morning for the women's basketball. And we're going to be down there until Sunday. We're not coming back till Sunday. So, Joe with a super chat. Happy Thanksgiving, fellas. Thankful for the Irish and IB Nation.
Thanks,
Thankful
Joe.
for you guys as well. We'll wrap it up on that. Jess, Vince, we will talk to you later. Happy Thanksgiving again. If we don't talk to you, IB Nation's